When promises are forgotten, trust disintegrates. Have you ever promised your team you wouldn't cut salaries, only to do it quietly when things got hard? Have you committed to funding a mission, then pulled out when the market shifted? Have you told yourself, "This time I'll be faithful," only to break that promise when financial temptation knocked at the door? If you've ever felt disappointed in yourself, lost the trust of others, or questioned your leadership integrity, you're not alone. In today's world, credibility is the most fragile currency and the hardest to rebuild. There's no insurance policy for a swallowed vow. No balance sheet can quantify the cost of broken faithfulness. And yet, there is a way forward. It's not a popular path, but it's the path God blesses. It's the way of Jephthah, the man who kept his vow to God, even when it cost him the one he loved most. A promise, a covenant between the human heart and heaven. In our digital age, where contracts are signed with a click and trust is lost in a single email, commitment can feel outdated. But for a true leader, especially a Christian entrepreneur in the U.S., a promise isn't merely a legal obligation. It is a sacred covenant. A promise made in the fear of the Lord binds not only human parties, but also the soul of the one who utters it, to the living God. Scripture tells of a man who led, who lived, and who kept his vow, so much so that even angels might have held their breath. Jephthah. Rejected by his family, summoned in crisis, a man who made a vow he could not take back. We are not to view Jephthah as a relic of the past, but as a mirror for every entrepreneur today, those who make financial decisions daily before God, before others, and before their own conscience. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change, this is the one who pleases the Lord. Psalm 15, verse 4. Have you ever made a promise you later wished you hadn't? And what if that very vow, meant to test you, actually shaped you, made you deeper, stronger, more surrendered to God? Jephthah. Commitment through pain and glory. Every Christian leader faces a battle, not just with external forces, but with the weight of their own promises before God. Jephthah's story, exiled and then called back, is a raw portrayal of how costly a vow can be and how sacred its fulfillment. But commitment unlocks faith and eternal impact. Some victories bring temporary applause, but some silent commitments echo for eternity as proof of unwavering faith. Jephthah isn't remembered as a brilliant strategist or charismatic speaker. He's remembered because he kept his word to God, even when it shattered his heart. John C. Maxwell, in the Maxwell Leadership Bible, writes, "True leadership isn't about success. It's about faithfulness to the calling. Success may attract followers for a moment, but faithfulness is what makes them stay and trust your leadership." Financial commitments, when made in faith and kept in reverence, become sacred stones of legacy. When you pay your team despite low revenue, when you give faithfully though funds are tight, when you honor your pledge even when the cost is high, you're composing a silent hymn of faith and integrity. For when I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. Christian entrepreneurs don't live for a plaque on Wall Street. They live to hear the voice of their master. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Matthew chapter 25, verse 21.
3. The vow that shaped a man and a nation. The crisis. Israel was crushed under Ammonite oppression. In desperation, they cried out for a deliverer, not a celebrity hero, but Jephthah, the son of a prostitute, disowned by his own family. From exile, he was called back to lead during Israel's darkest hour. A vow from a wounded heart. Knowing victory couldn't come from human strength, Jephthah made a vow before going to battle. If you give the Ammonites into my hand, whatever comes out of the door of my house to greet me will be the Lord's, and I will offer it as a burnt offering." It was a promise born in reverence, but also from a scarred desire to be accepted, to prove he was worthy. The cost of a promise: God gave victory, the people were saved, but the first to come out of Jephthah's house wasn't a servant or an animal. It was his only daughter, dancing with joy. He tore his clothes. "You have brought me low, for I have opened my mouth to the Lord and cannot take it back." Judges 11, verse 35. The silent glory. She accepted her fate, not out of coercion, but because she had been raised in reverence for the Lord. She asked for 2 months to mourn, then returned, vow fulfilled. No protests, just the quiet weight of a promise kept before God. 4. Keeping your word even when it hurts. In business, we make promises when passion is high and the vision is clear. But time passes, costs rise, partners back out, markets shift, and yesterday's commitments become today's burdens. That's when your true self is revealed. Jephthah could have said, "I didn't mean it would be my daughter," or "Surely God doesn't require this." But he didn't, because he knew a promise is not a passing feeling. It's a covenant with the Holy One. A promise is a sacred contract between yesterday's intent and tomorrow's integrity. Jim Rohn. When you keep your word, even at a loss, you declare to heaven and earth, "I don't live for convenience. I live for covenant faithfulness." Financial commitments cannot be governed by moods or markets. If you've pledged to give, to invest, to support, then fulfill it, because credibility is the eternal currency of kingdom leadership. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. Psalm 15, verse 4. The cost may be financial. It may mean lost opportunities. It may break your heart, but the reward is a soul refined, a business God can trust, a leader others want to follow. V. Modern business strategy through the lens of commitment. In a world where pivoting is a buzzword and flexibility often disguises instability, steadfast financial commitment becomes a rare and powerful strategy, especially for the Christian entrepreneur. 1. Make your financial commitments clear to your team. A kingdom leader doesn't speak in vague promises. When you say, "We will invest in this campaign," you're not just making a motivational speech, you're forging a covenant of trust. No hedging, no back doors, no "let's see how things go first." Clear commitments bring peace of mind. They cultivate a healthy culture of integrity, a currency more valuable than any bonus. Let your yes be yes and your no, no. Matthew 5, verse 37. 2. Commitment as a core branding strategy. According to the Story Brand framework, customers don't need more information, they need a promise they can trust. When your brand dares to say, "We offer a lifetime guarantee," or "We'll refund your money if you're not satisfied," and you actually follow through, you're not just selling a product, you're building a legend. In a noisy marketplace, commitment is the most emotionally powerful voice you can offer. It rises above features and benefits. It speaks straight to the soul.
3. Financial commitment reflects a life of intentionality. John Maxwell, in Intentional Living, says, "You weren't created to live a vague life. You were born to make a difference." When a Christian entrepreneur makes financial decisions, whether allocating a marketing budget, setting compensation, or investing in the community, every dollar should reflect kingdom purpose. Not spending to impress, not withholding out of fear, but investing because God has called you to it. Commitment does not kill flexibility. Commitment creates trust, the foundation for sustainable growth. A business may never need to raise venture capital. It may not rely on flashy marketing campaigns. But if it's known as the company that keeps its word, it will never lack customers, talent, or the blessing of heaven. Crafting a commitment story into your brand. Today's customers no longer just buy products. They buy the promise behind them. When someone signs up for your coaching package, they're not just purchasing 5 sessions. They're investing in the belief that you'll walk with them and not abandon them halfway. When they choose your product over a competitor's, they're trusting you'll be there when things go wrong. The strongest brands are not those that market the best, but those that keep their word the best. In this age of media saturation, a commitment story is your greatest differentiator. It's the red thread that ties together every touch point, from your CEO's voice, to your product descriptions, to your warranty policies, and even your social media responses. An inspiring example. We don't just sell shoes. We promise that with every step you take, a child is stepping closer to their dream because a portion of our profits fund scholarships for underprivileged students. That's not just marketing. That's evangelizing through enterprise. That's transforming capitalism into a tool for kingdom compassion. 4. Financial commitment is a moral foundation, not just a formality. In the modern American economy, where investors can pull out with a single click and contracts are often treated like poker chips, financial commitment has been reduced to bureaucratic formality. People promise when it's profitable. They walk away when it's not. But for the Christian entrepreneur, commitment isn't a bargaining tool. It's a measurement of character. It's a moral declaration. More than that, it's a spiritual statement. A promise is a contract between the intentions of yesterday and the integrity of tomorrow. Jim Rohn. Financial commitment in Scripture is always tethered to the fear of the Lord. When you pledge to pay wages on time, back an investment, or guarantee a supplier, you're not just transacting with partners, you're testifying to your obedience to the one who called you to lead. Let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything more comes from the evil one. Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. What every modern leader must understand: success does not guarantee influence, but integrity does. And it's the financial commitments you keep during adversity, not when it's easy, that become the moral foundation others are willing to follow. Commitment is not a tool of manipulation. It's a sacred vow laid upon the altar of leadership. He who keeps his oath, even when it hurts, he shall never be shaken. Psalm chapter 15, verse 4.
IV. Point 2. Real stories from the American business world. In a world where profits often triumph over principles, there are still Christian entrepreneurs who elevate their spiritual commitments above financial calculations. And it is precisely that choice that builds a legacy of eternal influence. David Green, Hobby Lobby, a commitment to serve God above reputation. David Green isn't just the founder of the largest arts and crafts retail chain in America. He is a man who kept his vow in the furnace of affliction. Green committed to giving away 50% of Hobby Lobby's profits to ministries and kingdom causes, even when that choice brought financial pressure, federal lawsuits, and media criticism. But he never compromised. When he declared that all stores would close on Sundays so employees could rest and worship, skeptics asked, "But what about profits?" The answer wasn't in the spreadsheets, it was in spiritual credibility. Profits may fluctuate, but trust in the Hobby Lobby brand grew stronger. We don't work for profit alone. We're called to steward what belongs to God. David Green. Truett Cathy, Chick-fil-A, leading by conviction, not just strategy. Truett Cathy never opened Chick-fil-A on Sundays, not because the market demanded it, but because his faith required it. He invested in communities, awarded scholarships, and supported employees' families. But what truly set Cathy apart was his franchise philosophy.
He only partnered with people who shared Christian values. His financial commitment wasn't in a spreadsheet, it was rooted in a kingdom vision. Chick-fil-A didn't grow by replicating a model, it grew by replicating a moral commitment. Success is about building people, not just restaurants. Truett Cathy. What can today's entrepreneurs learn? A promise won't make you poor, it will make you deep. Faithfulness doesn't slow you down, it positions you under the protection of God. IV. Point 3. Building a commitment story for your brand. Let the promise be the flame that leads. In an age where advertising is losing trust and consumers are overwhelmed with information, what makes a brand truly stand out is no longer just a beautiful product or even great service. It's a credible story. And there is no story more credible than a promise kept under pressure. Modern consumers don't just buy utility, they buy values, peace of mind, emotional alignment, the assurance of support. They don't just want a product, they want a living promise, a commitment proven through action, not just ad copy. A brand that keeps its word during crisis becomes a lighthouse in the storm. The commitment story, an irreplaceable strategic foundation. Unlike short-term marketing tactics, a commitment story can't be faked, outsourced, or borrowed. It can only be forged through real experiences, real decisions, and the real price a business is willing to pay to stay true. Chick-fil-A isn't famous because it opens more days. It's famous because it dares to close on Sundays to honor Christian faith. Hobby Lobby isn't admired for its low prices. It's respected for standing firm on biblical convictions, even in high-profile lawsuits. These brands don't tell stories just to inspire emotions. They tell stories of commitment to etch trust into the hearts of their customers. That's not PR, that's testimony. V. Commitment to self, to your team, and to God. 5.1. Commitment to self, self-control in investment and spending. Before a leader can keep their word to others, they must learn to keep their word to themselves. And there is no area that tests personal integrity more than finances, where a single misstep can have lasting consequences. Financial commitment to oneself is not a public vow. It is a quiet covenant between the leader and their conscience, between will and temptation, between a prayed-over plan and a volatile marketplace. He who rules his own spirit is mightier than one who takes a city. Proverbs 16, verse 32. Self-control doesn't eliminate risk, it enables you to stand within it. When markets shake, when cash flow tightens, when a can't-miss opportunity lands on your desk, your personal financial integrity will be tested. Will you pull out prematurely? Will you over-leverage your assets in fear? Will you abandon your principles in pursuit of a quick gain? A Christian entrepreneur doesn't invest just because the market looks good. They invest because the decision was prayed over, discerned, and submitted to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. The difference between a faithful investor and a reactive speculator is summed up in one word: discipline. Discipline to avoid wasteful spending when profits are high. Discipline to resist cutting vital commitments when funds are low. Discipline to not bend the rules when temptation speaks in the language of logic. Above all, discipline to live not as an owner, but as a steward. You cannot serve both God and money. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. See yourself as a faithful steward of the temporary so you may receive an eternal reward.
5.3. Commitment to God. Faithfulness even when no one sees. If commitment to self reveals discipline, and commitment to the team reveals integrity, then commitment to God reveals deep faith and reverence in a leader's heart. It's when you tithe faithfully, even when profits decline. You continue to support missions, despite shareholders calling it a non-essential cost. You walk away from lucrative contracts because they violate biblical ethics. It's when you act not for applause, but for alignment, not for short-term gain, but for eternal impact. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you openly. Matthew 6, verse 6. Like a Jephthah who kept his vow to God even when it shattered his heart, you realize the most precious currency in business is not money, it is faithfulness. Now, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. 1 Corinthians 4, verse 2. You may sign many contracts, but one true commitment to God, kept in full, can turn your life into a blessing for generations. Be like Jephthah. Live a life worth remembering. Jephthah's story is more than a Bible tale about a vow. It is a living portrait of faithfulness that transcends time. Rejected, restored, and tested, Jephthah did not just make a promise, he kept it with a broken heart. He didn't back down, even when it meant giving up his dream. And that's why his name appears in Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith, as a legacy for all who lead in a world of shifting sands. The Christian entrepreneur does not live for success. They live to become a witness through the promises they keep. O you who are called by God, keep your commitments like Jephthah, for the vow you make today will shape the honor you carry into eternity. Reflective questions for the faith-driven leader. Am I truly honoring the financial commitments I've declared to God, to my team, and to myself? Have I pulled back from a kingdom investment out of fear without seeking God's guidance? Do my spending decisions reflect my faith? If I had to write my legacy of commitment today, what would it say? Does my team believe I will keep my word, even when the outcome is uncertain? Key words and strategies for immediate application. Intentional stewardship. Every financial move reflects mission, not just margin. Public covenant. Clearly communicate key financial commitments within leadership teams. No ambiguity. No backdoor commitment. Once a promise is made, don't walk it back unless the Lord redirects. Brand covenant story. Turn your financial promises into living brand narratives that inspire deep trust. Crisis commitment culture. Train your team to value promise keeping as a non-negotiable, even under pressure. Jephthah left no empire, but he left a vow, and that vow still echoes through eternity. So can you, if you dare to keep your word in silence, in storms, and in faith. Thank you for following Faith 7 Business. Every follow is more than a number. It's a mark of faith, a spark of transformation, and a shared journey toward lasting value. Stay with us where stories, faith, and strategy unite to ignite inspiration and action.